Welcome to War Priest, where you get practical Orthodox Christian experiences, specifically for warriors.
War Priest commence.
Hey, welcome to War Priest. I'm Father George Hill. With me is my esteemed brother in arms, Alex Braszko. Alex, why don't you introduce yourself?
How you doing, Father? Yes, I'm Alex Braszko. Welcome to War Priest. This is our first recording. Father George Hill has been gracious enough to grace us with his presence here for the next hour, where you're going to get insights, recommendations, life advice, best practices, lessons learned, if you will, from over 100 years of practical Orthodox Christian man experience.
No, I'm not 100 years old. Why don't you explain that a little bit there, Hero?
Combined, and then also combined over 60 years of service to this great nation. So, Father, can you introduce yourself? Big picture overview, because we'll get to know you over the next few sessions, specifically, about your family and everything. But if you can introduce yourself, kind of your 30-second elevator pitch. Who are you? What's your background?
Sure. Father George Hill, retired chaplain, lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, 30 years in the military. The last 18 of it was as a chaplain. Before that, I was an armor officer and a civil affairs operator. Wife of 33 years and 6 kids. Yes, all from the same woman. So that's about it for the elevator speech, I guess. I practiced law back in the day. I was in the Army National Guard in Tennessee. I was a prosecutor for the 11th Judicial District, Chattanooga, Tennessee. During that time, 9/11 happened, went on active duty, and never looked back.
When did you retire, Father?
I retired February 28th, 2025 was my last day in the Army. March 1st was my first day as a civilian.
So you freshly hung up your uniform. It's probably still needing to be laundered or something.
It's still sitting in the closet, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, mine is a little cleaner and probably a little tighter on me than yours is on you. I retired in 2019, June 2019. After serving 22 years, I retired as a lieutenant colonel, and I retired at Fort Leavenworth, not the U.S. disciplinary barracks, but the fort itself. I retired out of MCTP. That was my last assignment there as an OCT. I was actually the Joint Effects Division Chief, and that was my last hurrah. I then went to Kansas City. I did about a year as a Chief Innovation Officer through 2 administrations, found out a lot about politics, found out what it means to be a victim of politics, to where you don't get rehired.
Is that when you started calling me?
Yeah. This is about the time frame I started calling you. And then I'm back working for the federal government. I won't say where, just so people can't track me down. But
good idea. Good idea. My last gig was at Special Operations Command Pacific here in lovely Hawaii. Before that, I was the garrison chaplain to U.S. Army Garrison, Hawaii. If we just keep going backwards, I was OCT at Fort Hood for 1st Army, 120th Brigade. Before that, I taught ethics at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School in Charlottesville, Virginia, for all the new Army lawyers and their career course. They call it something different. Before that, I was the command chaplain, 3rd Special Forces Group, and the Siege of Soda chaplain, Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, Afghanistan. Before that, 4th Military Information Support Group Airborne, used to be called PSYOP, Psychological Operations Group. And before that, I was a signal battalion chaplain in Stuttgart, Germany, 52nd Signal Battalion. Before that, it was all 82nd. 2508 Parachute Infantry Regiment and 282 Aviation Regiment. And that was my chaplain service. Before I was a chaplain, I was a civil affairs operator for 20th Special Forces Group. And then I was a Cav Troop XO and a Scout Platoon Leader and a Tank Platoon Leader of 270th Armored Cav Regiment in the Tennessee Guard. And before that, most people don't know this, I was in the Coast Guard. I was a law enforcement detachment officer in the early 90s before I went to law school. And we were doing a lot of counter-drug stuff down in South America, chasing off after Pablo Escobar. I never caught up to him, but somebody else did eventually.
I was very, very close to going to the Coast Guard. After I was in the Army for a while, I thought, man, it'd be nice to do something to where you were actually doing...
You went to West Point, didn't you?
I did. I almost went to the Coast Guard Academy, though. That was really my second choice.
But you're a West Point legacy. Third generation, fourth generation, something like that?
No, I'm second generation Army. I'm a brat. I'm an Army brat. My dad he was enlisted. He got drafted. He was enlisted, started out in the infantry, and he went through OCS after about 8 years being enlisted. And then he became an officer, and he went to Vietnam. He became a signal officer, actually. So that's how he retired. He retired a major after about 20 years as a signal officer. So yeah, no, I'm second generation. I'm first generation American, second generation U.S. Army. And we met, Father, in Stuttgart. That's where you were my chaplain. And we had a really good experience with you, of course. And then you've been very helpful to our family here recently with some, life struggles and life situations we faced with Lily, my daughter. So I really appreciate you being here, Father. I really appreciate the experience that you're going to bring to the conversations. And we're going to start out this session to where we've got some pre-planned topics we want to discuss, but we will eventually take requests and answer questions.
I'm proud to be here. Everything I say is absolute wonderfulness or your money back. Worth what you pay for, that's for sure.
Yeah, what you pay for, that's right. So yeah, we got to do the caveat. So because I'm currently still in a capacity doing things for our nation, all the things we're going to discuss are not official representation or for the Orthodox Church or for any of the services, because we have a joint audience, of course. So it's our own opinions and it's for entertainment value. How's that?
Well, that's pretty good for Alex Braszko. I am retired. I'm 100% civilian, so I can say whatever the hell I want.
Whatever you want.
I plan on doing so.
Great, Father. Great. Okay. So real quick, I want to go over what the purpose of this, because we got to do that, right? Military bottom line up front. The purpose of this this podcast that we're having here, or these recordings that we're doing, honestly, it comes from a gap, I guess, identified in talking to some recent and or current Orthodox Christian military personnel that are geographically isolated. And I realized after doing some research on how many chaplains we have in the Army and other services, and how many Orthodox Christians there are and the growth of Orthodox Christians in the military services, there's very likely a pretty significant gap in chaplain support, Orthodox Christian chaplain support, for the number of Orthodox Christians that are in the sister services.
That's
So again,
I think there's only 6 in the Army When I left the Army, I was the senior Orthodox priest in the Army, and I was just a lieutenant colonel. There were only 6 of us. I think there were only 4 when I showed up to Afghanistan with 20th Special Forces Group as a civil affairs officer.
Right.
And, I remember praying one time, throwing my hands up in the air. Lord, how come there's no Orthodox chaplains out here? I need an Orthodox chaplain. And basically, I got the message later on. Yes, there needs to be more, and that's what you're going to be doing.
So, Father, because we're trying to help people out here resource-wise,
Sure.
right? Military resources, Orthodox Christian advice, insights, resources. I'm not going to offer that. You're going to offer that because you're qualified to do that, but I cannot help with the military stuff. Where can service members go to find out who's the closest chaplain? Are there any chaplains serving on my post or base?
Sure.
Where do they go to?
I think the first place I would go would be the OCA website, www.oca.org. That's Orthodox Church in America. OCA. They've got a chaplains page on there, and there's a big long list of chaplains. Not all of them are OCA. I think they try to put everybody on there that they can come up with and their contact information. The other thing you can do is go to your installation chaplain office and hit them up and see what Orthodox resources they have. But there's not a whole lot of Orthodox chaplains running around. So if you're out there listening to this and you think you might have the calling to do something like that, everybody needs you. We need you. Everybody needs you. So there's just not enough to go around.
So, Father,
that's
officially,
my recruiting spiel.
What is the requirement for non-Orthodox chaplains? If I'm a soldier, I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I find my local chaplain, I go to the base chapel or whatever it is, and I say, hey, I'm Orthodox Christian. Are there any that you know of chaplains who are Orthodox? And you're told no. What are those other denomination chaplains required to provide to the service member?
Well, the standard is perform or provide. So they probably hook you up with a service book. They usually have a drawer that's got some crosses, maybe some icons in there. It depends on how well staffed they are. You move into a new office when you PCS, you go through the cabinet and there's rosaries in there, and there's every now and then there's some icons and stuff that another Orthodox priest left behind in that chapel. The Fort Hood Chapel, 25th Street Chapel at Fort Hood. I rolled in there and just started snooping around. I found 4 drawers full of icons. I bet you there were 50 icons in there. Wow. Just left over by a previous chaplain. So that happens from time to time. I know Fort Bragg, Wood Memorial Chapel in Ardennes has a cool little Orthodox chapel in the back of it. Looks like a little confessional area back there. But when you walk in that chapel, on the back left-hand side of the chapel, Father John Anderson, must have been 15 or 20 years ago, put a little Orthodox chapel in there. So that's pretty cool. It's right there at Fort Bragg. Fort Bragg's one of those places where they like to put an Orthodox priest. Most major installations, they try to put an Orthodox priest there. So if you're at some tiny place, Huachuca, Polk, something like that, maybe, I don't know, anyone on the smaller Marine Corps posts, you're not going to see an Orthodox priest there. Usually,
do you know
the big
anything
places.
about the Navy or the Air Force? You know any Navy chaplains, Air Force chaplains?
I do. I know 3 Navy chaplains personally by name. One of them is currently here in Hawaii, just left Naples. That's Father David Hostetler. He's about to deploy for a bit. Father Jordan Kingery is our Navy SEAL chaplain. He's in Florida, attached to a littoral combat squadron. Father David Alexander, I want to say he's in Okinawa. He's an 06 chaplain. I think he's a senior priest in the Navy right now. And there's a number of reservists that run around as well. So a lot of times it's hit or miss, but there are definitely resources out there, and you can reach out and touch any of these guys anytime you need to.
Great.
And you can always call me as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to do a plug, Father, for the soon-to-be reality, I guess, a 501c3 called the Faithful Centurion. It's a nonprofit. My wife and I, she's prior service Army as well. She was an NCO. We're going to put some stuff together, resources, some videos, including what we're doing right now, onto the website. And then we're probably going to partner with some other organizations that can provide physical supplies, whether iconography or liturgical equipment and things, or basically whatever the request is, we will try to fill it. So keep your eye open for, on this show, we'll announce the Faithful Centurion 501c3 nonprofit. And so Orthodox Christians, geographically isolated, difficult, right? If you get a chaplain, you're lucky. If you can find an Orthodox chaplain, you're lucky. And we'll get to that in a second. But if you're in a big city, you're at Fort Hood, or what do you recommend as far as finding a church to attend? What kind of advice would you give to young troopies looking for Orthodox church?
Well, if you are in a larger city, definitely go off post and get involved there. Sometimes, if you're a frequent PCSer or if you're a frequent deployer in the field, whatever, a lot of these civilian priests don't really know what to do with you. And they've got rules for catechumens, 365 days, 1 year, coming to church regular, that sort of thing, coming to their catechism classes, that sort of thing. Well, a lot of military folks aren't able to do all that. They're deployed, they're in the field, they're whatever, they're missing this and that, and they're not forthright enough to go tell the priest exactly what's going on. So he's not really sure what's going on. He just thinks you're less than interested and doesn't really pay that much attention to you. Had a young man I chrismated over here. He'd been a catechumen for 5 years in 2 or 3 different locations, and just kept getting the runarounds from priests that weren't really in touch with what he was doing. I don't know if it's failure of communication on his part or not, but we figure that stuff out and we can square you away in that regard. So yeah,
Okay.
Definitely hit up that local priest, that local parish, no matter where you are. I just talked to a warrant officer the other day. He's in Korea, and there's no chaplain there. I was like, well, where are you? Well, he's not far from Seoul. Well, I'm sure there's an Orthodox church in Seoul.
There is.
It's going to be all in Korean, so go to that.
I stumbled upon it when I was in 2ID. I was up on north of the Imjin River at the time. Doesn't exist anymore. It wasn't JSA, but it was the 1st Infantry Battalion South. It was 1st 506 Infantry. My battalion commander was then Lieutenant Colonel Mark Milley. And I was an assistant S2 there. And one weekend I said, surely there's got to be some Orthodox somewhere in Seoul, right? And so, this is back when the internet was like, I don't know, maybe 5 pages deep, however big it was. And so it was very hard to find any information, but I did find out there was one, and I made my way to Seoul, and it was pretty wild. It felt very exotic. It felt like it was a very strange experience to find it. No service when I went there, even though I thought there would be. Don't know why. At that time, the Koreans didn't speak much English. I don't know what the situation is now. I know we're much more developed. To be an Orthodox Christian in the military,
you kind of got to be a special operator. You got to think outside the box. And you've got to understand your operational environment. Think outside the box, do things unconventionally, come up with ideas on how you're going to proceed. And obviously, we can help you out a lot with that on this podcast. But you're going to have to be a self-starter. You're going to have to get after it. No one's going to be there to spoon feed you anything.
That's a good point.
You're going to have to, well, my son, the infantry officer, calls it FITFO, figure the F out, right? So you're going to have to FITFO a little bit. If you want it bad enough, you'll get it. Stoic philosophers say that everyone gets what they really want in the end. If you want it bad enough, you'll get it.
Let me ask you a question, Father, and this is where your Orthodox, priest experience comes in. Let's say I'm a Christian, maybe I'm a new convert, and I just really want to go worship, right? Would you recommend that you do not just go to some other church, anything that's available, the on-post chapel? I mean, if it's a Protestant service, is there anything wrong with going? And I'm kind of just dropping this on you. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that at all. Matter of fact, I mean, it's going to be helpful to be around other Christians. If you don't go anywhere or do anything at all, your spiritual life is likely to suffer. Your spiritual life is a lot like your physical life, and your spiritual fitness is very akin to your physical fitness. So suppose you like Gold's Gym, but all they have is Planet Fitness.
Yeah.
Well, unless you got one in your garage, I recommend you go into Planet Fitness, even if you're CrossFit, musclehead. Yeah. Go to the Planet Fitness, man. Do whatever you got to do to avoid spiritual atrophy.
So I think some people would probably say, and I can think of individuals that would say, better you not go to any other church. Better you sit alone in your room and pray, just you alone. If that's the case, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. You can't be alone. There's John Zizioulas wrote a book called Being is Communion, and the title says it all. That Aristotle talks about a human being as a politiki anthropon. That's a social person. So when you're not communing with people, then you're virtually non-existent. So your spiritual faith is going to be dependent on the people that you run into and the people with whom you fellowship, the people that you bounce ideas off of. So you can't just be all alone. That's usually a bad idea in my book. And so, I don't care really what you're doing.
I would agree with you, Father. I mean, for what it's worth, there were many, many times when I was alone and just, was new to a place, didn't have any friends, community, wanted to worship with people, wanted to be around people, didn't want to sit alone in my room, praying an akathist or something like that. So
yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that too. I mean, you need to do that as well. I'm not going to discourage you from doing that, but I would discourage you from not communing with anybody anywhere, even if it's just a buddy on the phone, something, because you will waste away.
Okay, great. So I think this is really good information, Father. It's helping out people to know where to go to get spiritual support if they're not getting it, or if they're in a place where it's not readily available. Do you have any recommendations for new converts or young Orthodox Christians out in the world for the first time on their own in some big city where there are multiple churches? Any recommendations on what to look for in a parish if they're, 20 to 25 years old, Orthodox Christians, know a little bit about the faith? Maybe they were cradled growing up and didn't take it seriously, or maybe they're new converts and they really want to take it seriously. Any recommendations on how to select a parish?
Well, that depends a lot on who you are and what you are. I mean, everybody's a lot different. If you, there's just so many different directions
Like, what would you do?
go in.
What would you do if you were a young soldier or a young airman or a young sailor and you show up to a new assignment? You go to local chapel on post or on base, you find there's nothing there. You ask about Orthodox Christian, services. They tell you got to go into town. What would you do? How would you start? How would you select them?
Well, this is how I would select them. This is Father George list. My last name is Hill. I'm Scots-Irish.
Okay.
My last name doesn't end in IS or ES. So I'm not Greek.
Okay.
So I'm definitely going to try to go to an OCA parish or an Antiochian parish or even Ukrainian, Serbian, something like that.
Yep.
If I was of Greek ancestry, I'd probably go hang out with the Greeks. Probably gonna wrap your arms around you a lot quicker. Same thing with, it depends on where you are. All of these parishes have a very unique cultural ethos around them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them are all American type parishes with a bunch of converts. And if you were Johnny Protestant from back in the day, that's probably where you ought to go. And then, go feel places out. How friendly are the people there? And see what feels right. And that's kind of true for any church or any social or cultural group that you hang around. Figure out where you feel like you belong and where you feel like you can make some friends. Stay away from places that are weird. You show up and people are weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a bunch of old people. Maybe it's a bunch of people that look down their nose at you. I don't know. Whatever the case may be. But there are places, and hey, the Orthodox Church isn't perfect. Actually, I might say that it is, but people in the church, the Orthodox Church is a hospital. It's full of sick people. So you go into the hospital and complain about all the sick people. Well, that's kind of silly, isn't it?
So we may take time.
Manage your expectations. Yep, and go look around.
Try a couple places. Try a couple times. Understand if you're not aware, if you're new to the faith, that there are cultural churches. There are, you know what I mean, where
and not all Greek churches are alike either. Some of those Greek churches are phenomenal places to be. Others are more Greek culture clubs than they are Christian. So it just depends on where you wind up.
And if that's all you have available, maybe take a look and just learn everything you can about that culture's perspective on Orthodoxy, right?
If
learn
that's
as
all
much
you got available, then still get there because it's still the divine liturgy.
Make the best of it. That's exactly right. Okay.
Still a divine liturgy. I've done it. You've done it because we've moved all around. And there's some parishes that we prefer and some that we don't. There's some that we would recommend and some that we wouldn't. So it's just really up to you.
Okay. So this is great, Father. Thank you. I know this isn't really controversial or anything, but this is practical advice. One of the things we're trying to provide to the target audience here.
And if you got any, when we haven't set our website up yet.
Not yet. Nope.
But when we do, we will give the shout out to that address. In the meantime, you can email me if you want. I think my stuff's still up on the OCA website. Okay. My email address is ruston.hill@gmail.com, ruston.hill@gmail.com. Got any questions? Shoot me an email and we'll help you move in the right direction.
Great. Thanks, Father. So let's move on to something that maybe is a little more controversial. and maybe is on people's minds. When people become Orthodox, if they're new to it, oftentimes, and then they're in the military, they will face individuals that will either criticize them for being in the military, serving two masters kind of thing, potentially, or even being in a profession whose primary, missions are to kill people and destroy things, right? So how can you be an Orthodox Christian when your job is to kill other people and destroy things on this earth?
Yeah, so I think a better question is, how can you be Christian and do those things?
Yes.
Okay. So Orthodox Christians are primarily Christians right off the bat. This is original Christianity. This is the source. If we talk about Orthodox Christianity compared to the rest of the Christian world, we're talking about pure grain alcohol here. So some of the other churches out there might be strawberry daiquiris. Some of them might be, beer and wine, liquor, 90 proof, 120 proof. Orthodox Christianity is 200 proof pure grain alcohol Christianity. So, mere Christianity, just the basics with no added flavors is what we have here, theologically speaking. Now, your question is, could be, controversial. I've got a lot of experience with this question. The question aggravates me a little bit, but it goes back to Christian ethics. It goes back to the foundations of Christian ethics in the first 2 or 3 centuries AD, before Constantine legalized Christianity. So originally, the very first time we ever come up with this issue is when John the Baptist is speaking to the Roman soldier. And he tells the Roman soldier, be content with your wages, don't kill anybody unnecessarily. So those two things. He never says, well, if you want to follow the Christ, well, you have to give up your career. He never said that at all. Never said it. So that's the first thing that we have to base it on right there. We also see the righteous centurion. We also see Paul ministering to the centurion and his family and baptizing him and his entire family. Of course, now these naysayers, well, you don't know what the centurion did after that. Maybe but no, we don't. We sure don't. But we do see in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries pockets of churches and pockets of parishes that are forbidding baptism and chrismation to soldiers. But it wasn't because of the killing. It was because of the burning of incense to the gods. So let's talk
that
about...
was a requirement as a soldier?
Sure. Let's talk about that. So every unit out there has a guide on, right? Fury from the Sky in 2508, Dale Presto Libera and Special Forces. They got their guide on and their flag that they rally under. So in the ancient Roman army, each one of these formations had their own chosen gods. Like maybe Demeter is the god of this particular formation, this particular battalion. So for field exercises, before combat, before anything else, they had a small service where they would go burn incense before that god before they went into combat. So that became the thing, and actually got a lot of early Christians into trouble because they refused to offer incense to the gods. Well, when you did that, that's almost like that's I guess the
worse than an Article 15.
Well, it's you're casting bad luck dispersions on your formation before you go into combat.
You're almost a traitor. You're almost a traitor then.
Yeah, exactly. So these early Christians that refused to do that, well, and 40 martyrs of Sebast refused to do that. And they all got put out on the ice. I'm sure we'll talk about them at some point. But St. Sebastian, the same thing. So if you are burning incense to the gods, then you can't be in the church, right? You can't get baptized, receive the Eucharist. You can't even say the creed. So if you are not burning incense to the gods, well, you're disloyal to your own formation. How can we trust you if you're not burning incense to the gods like we are? So you put those two things together and they become mutually exclusive. So that was an issue. So for a long time, they would not chrismate you or baptize you, chrismate you, bring you into the church if you were a soldier for that purpose right there.
Okay. Then what happened?
Well, then you've got Constantine shows up and frees the Christians. So this is no longer an illegal religion. You can participate in this now. And the entire army essentially converted. But it turned into quite a thing because Christianity originally spread in two main venues. One of those was in the philosophy clubs of Alexandria, Egypt, among the Stoic philosophers. The other one was in the army. So mass conversions in the military, so much so that a good chunk of Constantine's army was already Christian at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, I believe in 312 AD, when he faced off against his brother Maxentius and united the Eastern and Western empires. So a lot of them had crosses painted on the inside of their shields. So Constantine sees his vision in the sky on the eve of the Battle of Milvian Bridge. And he also was not completely aloof to the fact that there were crosses painted on the inside of these soldiers' shields.
Right.
So he found out about that. So he had the crosses painted on the outside of the shields because he looked up in the sky and this side conquer and basically Christianized the Roman army at that point. So now there's no more issue with being in the army, no more issue of burning incense to the gods. We have priests in the army now, Christian priests, right? Burning incense to the god on the eve of battle against the pagans. So now that changed everything around quite a bit, if you can imagine.
Sure.
So what ends up happening is the whole pacifism question comes up.
Yes.
So are Christians allowed to kill? Well, no, you are not allowed to kill. We do not kill. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by a man his blood shall be shed, for the image of God made he man. Genesis 9:6. And that remains true. However, living in a fallen world, we don't always get a choice between good and evil. We get a lot of choices between shitty and really shitty, in other words, you see?
Yeah.
So what are we to do at this point? And are we all just going to leave the military and have our own little pious lives and let somebody else defend our country and our way of life and our families and that sort of thing? And the answer is, well, no, you can't really do that and be a responsible person. And Christians are responsible people. So Christians could serve in the army. But if you killed someone in the army, according to St. Basil's Canon number 13, you had to go or undergo a 2-year penance, which meant you had to abstain for 2 years from receiving the Eucharist for killing someone in combat. This was 4th century, 5th century, 6th century. By the time the 7th century rolled around, that canon fell out of use because so many people were involved in the Muslim wars throughout the Christian empire.
Okay.
From Turkey through Palestine through North Africa. So many involved in these Muslim invasions that nobody would be received in the Eucharist. So it remained a canon because canons just don't go away. We don't repeal canons. Another piece about canons is it's in the Orthodox Church. It's not like the Roman Church where this is canon law and must be obeyed, right, to the letter. Canon law in the Orthodox Church belongs exclusively to the purview of bishops, not even priests. So bishops are the only canon lawyers, and they are the only canon judges. And these canons are viewed as guidelines for bishops. And the church exercises what we call economia, which means these standards are applied to the specific situation with the specific person. And it is the spirit of the canon that provides salvation, not the letter of the canon. I seem to have read that somewhere before. The spirit gives life, the letter of the law kills, the Lord said, but the spirit gives life. So the spirit of this canon is, we're not out here to rape, kill, pillage, and burn. But that extended and it turned into just war tradition. I'm sure we can talk about that in the future. Just war tradition really established by Cicero and built upon by Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. But in the East, there is no canon of just war tradition because we don't just canonize everything like they do in the West. So, but when you look at the tenets of just war tradition, there's nothing in there. I would argue there's nothing in there that the Orthodox Church would disagree with at all. It's just not written down and standardized, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So now let's talk about the practicality of Christians, including Orthodox Christians, leaving the military. When the organization that has the most guns suddenly has no Christians in there, what do we have left? If there's a vacuum of godly people with righteous standards, what's left? What we have left is a whole bunch of people who will merely follow orders, typically. And I think we've talked about this before. If all the Christians leave the military, who's going to be left to say no to the immoral order? Who's going to be left to say no when they tell you to drop Xylon B tablets in the Jewish barracks?
Yeah.
Who's going to be left?
Yeah.
So, and
if I can interject here.
Yeah, jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share this, not the details, but there was a time that this is one of the most important pieces of advice I got from you was when I was serving at AFRICOM, and I was the Agisto deputy, so the Integrated Joint Special Technical Operations deputy, and I remember going to confession to you and not discussing the details of operations and things we're doing, but just informing you that I had a heavy heart. I felt a very heavy burden in doing some of the things we were doing, con ops, things that we were developing and doing with the capabilities that we had. And so I remember telling you I had to get out of the Army. I didn't think I could stay in the Army and do the things that we were doing because I didn't think it lined up with our faith, and morality and ethical things potentially. And so the piece of advice that you gave me was, hey, exactly what you just said, that when we don't have people who feel bad or potentially bad about doing something potentially, then we're going to be in a real bad place because, you don't want to do those things. You don't want to do anything unethical or immoral. And those are exactly the sort of type of people that need to stay in and that need to be at the helm for those type of capabilities. So that made a huge impression to me, or on me. And it did cause me to stay in.
Thank God for that.
I didn't have to do anything unethical or immoral, but man, there were times it was towing the line. You know what I mean? It was like right there.
Well, we're told as young officers and NCOs and junior enlisted, you do not follow orders that are illegal, unethical, or immoral.
That's right.
So illegal, well, that's if it violates law. Unethical, that's if it violates regulation. The specific one that pops in my head is the JER, the Joint Ethics Regulation. You don't violate that. Now, it's not law, it's regulation. A lot of soldiers don't understand the difference between law and regulation. Law is if the Congress of the United States passed it. Regulation is a general order, basically signed by the secretary of the department or signed by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or signed by someone like that. Or, we've got 82nd Airborne Regulation. That is regulation signed by the commander, right? That's regulation. It's a military order. Now, under law, under Title 10 and under the UCMJ, which is also law, you are to follow the orders of the officers appointed over you. And you cannot disobey orders. That regulation is just that. That regulation is an order. So that's legal. Regulation is ethical. What about the moral? That third category out there. And that's the piece that isn't written down anywhere. Congress didn't decide on it. Your commander didn't decide on it. But it's still, you don't follow orders that are immoral either. So that comes down to a very nebulous standard. So morality for an atheist and morality for an Orthodox Christian could be two very, very different things.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what happens when the military has a vacuum of people who do not have Christian standards of morality? And by Christian standards of morality, that's the basis of morality in Western civilization. That's the basis of our moral philosophy. Comes from a combination of the Stoics and Christianity. Right. So if you don't have that, and no one's educated about the Stoics nowadays, that's a forgotten philosophy, it seems like. And all you have is the morality of Nietzsche and Engel. Well, now what? Absolutely. You got an order. You can't disobey the order because you don't want to do anything unethical. So you're going to drop Xylon beat tablets in the Jewish barracks. So you're going to commit war crimes.
What if someone presents an argument that as an Orthodox Christian, the church should be your first and primary focus, and by serving under a flag or serving a nation in its armed forces, you're trying to serve two masters? You got any thoughts on that, Father? Because that's a common thing people will bring up. Like, you know what I'm saying?
It's a really flimsy argument that's two masters. In that case, quit your job because now you're serving two masters. You got a boss somewhere.
Right.
So,
or if you can't be, can you be a cop and an Orthodox Christian? Okay.
I sure hope you can.
Yeah. Can you be, EMS? Can you be a firefighter, a public servant? Absolutely. And so,
sure.
What is the military other than service to your nation, public servant?
What's service to the nation? I mean, the unfortunate part about the military is basically we have two traditional roles that we do very, very well. Seems like everything else is not that great, but we kill people and break things better than anybody else.
Yep.
That is the primary role. If you're not actively involved in the killing or breaking of things, then you are supporting that in some kind of manner.
That's right.
So when you're asked to do it, then you do it unless you see what's going on as immoral. And then in that case, we come into the ethical philosophy of loyal disobedience. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with that or how familiar other people are. But as an ethicist at the JAG school, we talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah,
That's when you say no.
That may be a good topic at a future time, so we can really dive into it, because we did bring up some really important points here. Couple things I want to ask in the last. We've got about 10 minutes left, Father. So for our first hour, there are hundreds of Orthodox Christian saints, right? And we commemorate, and we have feast days, and there are maybe a couple dozen that people are very familiar with. I don't know. Depends on your ethnicity. Depends on your time you've been in the Orthodox service. Can you dispel? Do you have any evidence, or can you dispel the thought that yes, they were military, but they were not venerated or commemorated for the fact that they were warriors or having a warrior mindset, or that they were not remembered for even killing? Any examples to counter that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't think anybody's going to be venerated specifically for killing, but there are exceptions to even that as well. I mean, you have Saint Demetrius. This is under the reign of Emperor Diocletian, being held captive. One of his fellow, now I believe I've got this story right. Somebody can fact check me. If my retelling of the story is wrong, by all means, fact check me and throw it out there. I'm certainly not infallible. I should tell people, hey, two things I can guarantee. Everything else, I'm not completely sure. There is a God, and I'm not him. So Father George is not God. I am fallible. I can mess things up quite a bit. But retelling the story here, sure, you have Nestor and Gaius. Gaius was a gladiator, and Nestor was a Christian, apparently confined with Saint Demetrius. And his punishment is he's to suffer death in the gladiatorial bout. So he's supposed to fight this gladiator Gaius in the arena. So he goes to Nestor, and I guess Gaius hates Christians, and he's slandered God and everything else, right?
Right.
So Nestor goes to Demetrius, and Demetrius blesses him to go slay Gaius. So Nestor goes in.
Nestor wanted to slay the gladiator. He from what I remember, I understand, is because of that disrespect, because of his arrogance, pride, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
He specifically
was an
asked
asshole.
for blessing to slay him, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Yep. So Demetrius didn't tell him, no, we're Christians, we don't kill. Nope. He blessed, apparently they prayed about it, and he blessed Nestor and told Nestor that God is going to grant you victory and you'll prevail over Gaius in the arena. And the next day, and he said that after that, you will also die. You'll receive your crown of salvation through martyrdom. So he went out there, apparently whooped Gaius' ass. And then afterwards, he was beheaded in front of everybody, kind of thing.
Yeah, by his own sword, I think, or something. Yeah.
Right. But then you got the naysayers who are going to jump in and say, oh, no, he's venerated for his martyrdom. Well, surely he's venerated for his martyrdom.
Absolutely.
But what was his martyrdom from? From following the blessing through the Lord's saint to go kill the bad guy. So even that doesn't wash out fully. So most of these folks that say this sort of a thing, they are under the spell of, I don't even know if the groups are anywhere. I haven't heard from them since I was in seminary. The Orthodox Peace Fellowship. How much time do we got? I can tell this story real quick.
We got 6 minutes, Father. We're fine. Yeah, go ahead.
So when I first went to seminary, I just left Afghanistan in April of 2003. We had been there. First Battalion, 20th Special Forces Group, and 20th Group itself was the Siege of Sodef at the time. The only time National Guard's ever been Siege of Sodef in Afghanistan. So, might have been OEF 2. I remember watching the Iraq War kick off 03, 04. I can't remember. Watch it from Bagram. Anyways, they rolled in, and I'd spent that much time in Afghanistan. Came off active duty, left the DA's office in Chattanooga, went to seminary. First thing I did was go to a conference of the Orthodox Peace Fellowship because I'm like, hey, I like peace. I just spent that time in Afghanistan, watching people blow up, and watching people starve to death as a civil affairs officer, getting shot at, everything else. So yeah, I like peace. I'll fit in with this group. Great. And nope, I did not. They did not like the fact that I was a veteran, that I was a combat veteran, and they even told me, they found out I was going to become a chaplain in the Army. And one of them said the chaplains were doing the work of Satan because they were complicit in the killing that the United States Army was doing in Afghanistan and Iraq. So, I'd never, this group was basically a bunch of leftover hippies, Vietnam era hippies protesting the war. And so now they were protesting this one, and now they were doing it with the Orthodox Christian name behind them. So, that was the first group that I ran into, and there was a half the seminarians were all about that too, but these were largely wimpy men who spent a lot of time in their mama's basements, as keyboard warriors kind of thing. So I did see some of that, and a lot of this stuff comes from there, and it's still floating around in pockets. Actually took a just war class at the University of Virginia when I was getting my graduate degree for the Army in ethics. And they talked about pacifism. Pacifism is not a Christian ethic, and never has been. Neither is total war a Christian ethic. We talk about Aristotle's golden mean is in the middle. We have vice on one side and then corresponding vice on the other side. So pacifism and total war are corresponding vices. Just war is Aristotle's golden mean. And I mean, we can talk about that in the future, because I can give you a million examples.
Well, you brought up something interesting that we just don't hear much about nowadays, and that was the early church, and that was the conversion of large numbers of soldiers
yes,
to Christ, right? And
entire formations converting. In Romania, Romania claims to be the original Christian country. It's because all those soldiers became Christians.
Yeah. And so you would have priests that were praying for, but also blessing soldiers to go off into battle to kill the enemy, right? Do we still still do that?
Yes, in the Book of Needs, there is a prayer for soldiers departing for battle.
Okay.
So one of those, one part of that prayer is that they kill no innocent person, that they kill no non-combatants, that they kill no one needlessly. But that prayer is in there. And I will say this, when you kill in combat, it is never going to be the greatest thing you ever did in your life. Might be the worst thing you ever did in your life. You have taken another human being's life, and that human being is made in the image of likeness of God. It is never going to be a great thing. It is never going to be something that we celebrate you for. And you should go confess it and be cleansed from it, and move on. If you have to do it again, you have to do it multiple times. It's never going to be a wonderful thing. It's always going to be something rather something dark and something wrong. But in this fallen world, oftentimes we're not given the opportunity between good and evil. A lot of time it's evil and lesser evil. So it is something that should be repented of, and it is something that you should be sorry for. And then you'll move on. And that's the way it's going to be. I remember dealing with this as an armor officer, as a young Orthodox Christian. I was talking to my priest, and I said, "Can I, if I'm to be a saint, if I'm called to be a saint, and yet I'm a tank platoon leader, which that job description is I'm a manager of violence. I manage violence for a living. I turn it on, I turn it off, I put more here, I pull it away here, and I apply it here. I'm a manager of violence. How can I do that and be a saint?" And Father Stephen Rogers looked at me and he says, "I don't know. I just know that you can."
Mm. No, these are things we will continue to talk about, Father, in the future, in more depth, specifically the impacts onto us as Christians when we do commit violence or kill people. The best way to respond to it. I also do want to talk about, we of course, in my job are constantly thinking about the next war and what's it going to look like and what's it going to feel like. And I'll have a bunch of questions for you on how best to address that. Everything from fear, from the fear that you will face, how to do that as a soldier. The Book of Needs, I'd like to talk about that more because I didn't learn about that until much later in life. As far as I know, there's prayers if one of your comrades is down, you can as a lay soldier, pray specific prayers for them.
You can baptize them.
Okay.
You can do an emergency baptism.
There we go. And so these are things that I don't think many Orthodox Christians are aware of, and I've learned later in life. I wish I had learned about them when I was in the military, but it was after that. So anyway, these are great topics, Father. I really appreciate your time. Again, we're planning on doing this a bunch. If people do have questions, Father gave his email address, so go ahead and send your questions to that email address, and we'll review them, and we'll try to address them, given the topics we're going to focus on per each podcast. And Father, any last minute thoughts, ideas, anything that popped into mind from what we discussed today? Yeah.
Sure thing. I'm going to go over that email address one more time. rustin.hill@gmail.com. That's Romeo Uniform Sierra Tango Oscar November .hill@gmail.com. Hit me up if you've got a topic of discussion you want us to talk about on the show. Shoot that to me. I'd love to hear from you. And for all you heroes out there, wherever you are not alone. God bless you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Father.
This is War Priest signing off the net. God bless you. Out.